It's in the OFL position.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Kentucky Sustainable Living, Homesteading, and Preparedness Festival. We're so excited that you're here. We're here, guys. We're doing this. Okay. My name is Shelly Randolph, and I'm with 20 Crows Homestead. This is...
I'm Jason Sparks with Kentucky Sustainable Living.
And...
Jake Snyder with Dog Creek Farm.
And we are the creators of this, I guess, along with a million other people that have helped us. Most of you all are in this audience. So we are so thankful for that. So let me introduce Chris Clark to you. Woo woo! He's gonna be the MC for this event, and he's gonna be the MC for our dinner tonight. We're really excited to have him. He's a lot of fun. If you have any cool dad jokes, you might want to give him some stuff to use. He knows them all. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
I don't think he needs.
No, thank you, Shelly and Jason and everybody for putting this on. This is a fantastic one, just from what we've seen so far. We're all looking forward to it. Before we get started, though, let's pray over this whole festival.
Yes.
Father, God, thank you so much for bringing us all together to share in ideas and wisdom, God, which is why you designed community. We thank you for the freedom that you give us to do this. We thank you for the calling in our hearts. We thank you for the encouragement of one another. And God, I pray that the audience understands my dad jokes. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray and we thank you. Amen.
Amen. That's a big prayer.
So, yes, for those of you not familiar with my wonderful MC skills, I am paid by the joke, so you're going to get a lot of them. So we got invited to go to a few of these homestead festivals. Myself and my family have been homesteading for years. And the first speaker, if you're not familiar with the schedule, it's posted on the doors today. I highly encourage you to, if you need to, if you're here as a couple, divide and conquer, but you won't want to miss any of the talks. So right now, over in Classroom 2, they're going to be introducing Chuck Peoples with Homestead Medicine. And I get the privilege of emceeing for this room. The first speaker that we have in this room today, Tag, as you can say, the subject is leaving the system. I got a chance to meet him for the first time a year and a half ago or so at another festival. And one of the things that me and my family are thankful for, not that you would guess it by my t-shirt, but we are very thankful for our freedom and our freedom to be able to homestead and our freedom to be sentient beings, not tied down in any form of bondage or slavery. And if you look to it, you might say, well, that's not true. You're still in the U.S. banking system, or you're still in this system. But our goal in life is how life should be, is to be free from as many of those constructs that are designed to keep you down as possible. So when I first heard this guy talk about a year and a half ago, I was like, bro, my people. And it is true. So fascinating guy. I don't want to steal his whole thunder, but a brief introduction just so you know who it is that's talking. This guy helped found a multi-million-dollar company, had over 900 employees, and then they developed a policy forcing people to take the jab. So he not only left it, but he got out of that. And he and his wife, Bee, have started a YouTube channel, and I'm going to let him talk a lot about all the things he has. But when you talk about Freesteading, which is their home channel, or their YouTube channel, if you haven't figured that out, perhaps the greatest benefit to all of this is not just going to be the nutrition that you can change from establishing your own homestead and growing your food, but the independence that you have from not becoming part of the social construct, but to the overall freedom that God designed us all to be and to have. And so when we get a chance to hear people speak who can help us encourage to break away from as many of those social constructs as possible and to get involved in these social constructs instead, I welcome these guys with open arms and what they have to talk about. So, without much further ado, because he's shaking someone's hand, I'd like to introduce you to Tag. Let's give it up for Tag from Freesteading.
I got coffee.
Lucky duck.
I know,
Stop
right?
bragging.
Life's grand. Hey, before I get started, I just thought it would be neat to give Shelly and Jake and Jason a little bit of love. You know, they managed to bring this to you guys for free. And although I wasn't involved in the everyday process, I followed it along the way. You know, we run kind of in a lot of those same circles, and this is the work for this has been going on for a long time. You know, they donated a lot of their energy capital to you guys, so when you see them, make sure you tell them thank you. Because again, I promise you guys, I do this too. This is a lot, you know, for them to do. So, I guess let me start with introductions real quick. I don't know how many of you guys know who I am. My name is Tag. I have the YouTube channel Life Done Free. I also have the social media platform freesteading.com. I own an alternative energy company called Grid Down. But what I think is important for you guys to know about me today is I'm a 100% off-grid homesteader. I live in a large intentional neighborhood, and I think it's important you recognize I use the word intentional neighborhood, not intentional community. Okay? This community that we built, you know, from the ground up. But for today's conversation, I'm going to be talking about leaving the system. And so I think it's more important you know who I was. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, and then I'm going to give you guys what are the five critical building blocks to getting out of the system today. So let's go back to about 2020. And anybody remember what was going on in 2020? Yeah, so, you know, it's interesting as I think back to those days, there was reports of, you know, the beach isn't safe, right, because of the water, and there could be a 30% mortality rate. And, you know, your packages weren't safe, your food weren't safe, your pets weren't safe, nothing was safe, even your family itself was not safe. And so this impacted a lot of people. And so you guys know I lost my father to COVID, right? But I lost way more than that as well. So when all this craziness was going on, at that time I was working as a financial executive. I ran 2 financial holding companies, 2 life insurance companies, a marketing company, and an investment company. I had 900 employees. We did business in 32 states, and I answered only to the CEO himself. My job at the time was revenue, so I was in charge of all money in, whether that was sales, marketing, you know, shareholder relations, investments, just whatever it was. And he approached me one day and he said, "Hey, Tag," he said, "well, how would you feel if we mandated the vaccine for everybody?" And I was quick, right, because I'm a big freedom guy. I'm a freedom guy. And so I was quick and I said, "You know, Jack, I think this is a bad idea. I think it's bad because it's going to open us up to lawsuits in the future because of the HIPAA laws. But I also think that we're crossing a very dangerous line in that we as an employee have no ownership over our employees' bodies. You want to mandate the mask, that's fine. But if what you want to do is mandate somebody injecting something into their body, I think it sets a bad precedent. I am not supportive in any way." And he said, "Okay." And guys, I'll tell you, at that time, I really hoped that this would just go away. You know, that I'd made my stand, it was fine, we could go back to making money and life would be good. But it's interesting as I look back at it, this was really not about COVID anymore, because I challenged him directly is what it became about. And so a week later went by and he came to me and he said, "Hey, we're now going to mandate the vaccine for everybody." And he said, "You have 30 days to complete the task, and I think it's most important that you do it." Because again, this was about control, right? He wanted me to set all of my stuff aside, what I believed in my heart aside, for the greater good, right? So I did what any good red-blooded American slave who's completely tied to the system would do. I said, "Yes, sir." And I left that day and I headed home, and you know, I was thinking to myself the whole time that if I do this, I'm a hypocrite. If I do this, everything that I believe leadership is, I'm a liar. This just doesn't make sense to me. And I had to go through a lot of debate, because you guys got to understand that at that time I had a mortgage, I had 2 car payments, right? I was living the normal, what you see as American life. My wife drove a BMW, I had a Hummer. You know, my kids were in every class, you know, that was out there. And if I was going to make this change, this was going to have a big impact. And as I promised the CEO, that I told him that I was going to schedule a meeting, and I did. And probably the most profound part of my story was this day, because when I showed up that day, it was so weird. Like, they were just so nice. Like, so nice. You know, the CEO put his arm around me, you know, and told me that he was proud of me. And the board of directors came up to me and told me they were proud of my leadership. And I'll just never forget that, you know, kind of that aura that was going on that day for me. And, you know, it's kind of crazy. You know, I get a lot of credit for standing up to the man, but the fact is, I didn't know I was going to do it to that very moment. Because I was debating in my mind, right? I had a lot to lose. I don't know how much you guys know about the corporate world, but I worked in it my whole life. And I'll tell you guys, the corporate world is very structured and it's very orchestrated. What was going to go on that day at that meeting was planned out all the way from the beginning. Okay, the CEO's job that day, his name was Jack. Jack's job that day was to set me up to do what I had to do. And so he got on stage and he talked about we were all a family. And he talked about how we were all on one mission. And he talked about how we had to put our own personal needs aside for the greater good. Because again, his job was to set me up. So it was my turn. I took stage, I got up there, and I told the employees that I loved them. I told them that I urged them to make their own decision, to do their own research, but the company would not be mandating anything. And you know, I gotta tell you guys, as soon as that happened, I got goosebumps when I just said it right there. You know, when that moment came, this thing lifted off of my shoulders. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't a slave. Even though it cost me everything, right? For that very first time, it was so powerful, to me to be in that position. Now, I have to tell you, the excitement faded quickly as I was escorted off the stage.
Security?
Yeah, the reality of it, set in pretty quick. But the point I'm trying to make to you guys is that our life comes down to a matter of choices. We all have choices, right? And, I had a choice that day where I could betray what I thought leadership was. Or I could look out for myself and look out for my way of life and just toe that company line. So just like me, you guys have choices every single day. And I know that it's hard. The CEO often would say to me this statement, and I use it every day. It's like such a smart statement. He said, actions have consequences. And this is something I think about every single day in my life when we talk about the ripple effect of living free and we talk about all of these things. But the actions had consequences for him too, right? That's a two-sided street. People come up to me all the time and they say, well, Tag, it must have been nice. You had a great career. It must have been a lot easier for you to do it. But the fact is I risked the same amount anybody else was going to risk, right? And the fact of the matter is, if in your mind, if what you're saying to yourself is, I have no choices. I have no choices because I have to pay my rent. I have no choices because I have to pay my health insurance. I have my choices. If you have no choices, what does that make you?
Slave.
You're a slave. Are we proud of this? Well, I can tell you that I'm certainly not. Just by a show of hands, I'm just curious, how many people in the audience today think the executive branch is working for them?
Just me? Come on, people.
Okay, it's all right. All right, so that was maybe a bad example because we have Biden, but I'm 0 for 1. Okay, so how about the legislative branch? Is it working for you? Are they making laws today that benefit the people?
Nope.
Okay, so that one's not it. How about the judicial branch? Are they working for you?
There's a
They're
couple.
all trying to kill us.
Maybe.
There's a
Are they
few.
enforcing the Constitution as they promised to uphold?
A couple of them.
Yep. Okay, so since I'm 0 for 3, I'm going to take a couple jabs at a couple more things. A couple more things.
I got it.
Okay, got it. Boom, boom. Bad joke. No. How about the education system? Are we teaching our kids to be self-thinkers?
Oh, no.
Are we teaching them to grow? We're not, are we?
Well, we are.
We are homeschooling baby.
Of course you guys are. Is the system doing it?
No.
No, absolutely not.
How about the medical system? We're creating cures, aren't we? Man, I'm just not very good at this, apparently. Okay, 2 more. How about the financial system? Do they care that you are financially secure? No? And we grow the greatest food in the world, right? We are the healthiest people on the planet. Guys, tell me one thing that's going right. One thing in our system.
We're able to be here.
You're here because of your choices. Amen. Guys, on that point, I have some good news for you. Right? Just as my founding fathers and just as my ancestors got to participate in the Great Migration, and I don't know how much you guys know about this, but in the 1800s, over 40% of the population participated in the Great Migration, and they headed west because of the promise of free land or gold or whatever it was. But the bottom line was they were leaving tyranny. They were leaving political, religious, and social disorder, and they were headed west. And just as they got to participate, we get to live history as we participate in the Great Resignation. This I'm excited about. This should bring joy to everybody. So anyway, now let me go back to my story. So now I lost my job, right? So now what do I do? So what I did is what any normal, rational person would do. I took all my money out of the market. I sold all of my assets. I bought a blank piece of land. I built a 5,000 square foot super off-grid home. I have no electric bill, no water bill, no sewer bill, no mortgage, no car payments. I'm 100% debt-free, and I ask permission from very few people. So let's talk about, I outlined 5 things as I went back through my life, this part of my life, on what helped me make that break of exiting the system. And the first one I want to talk about is mindset. You guys are already doing it because you're here. right? You guys are already doing it, but for me, the mindset is I had to acknowledge the fact that I was lied to. I had to acknowledge the fact not only that I was lied to, but that I fell for it. Right? That was the first step for me. And as soon as I recognized that it was my decisions that put me there, I decided to take the job. I decided not to mandate the vaccine, right? I mean, every decision we make in life is our fault, good or bad. And as soon as I could come to terms with the fact that that one was on me, it really enabled me to be able to be smart and to be able to go forward, recognizing that I'm now going to win or lose based upon my own action. Next thing I want to talk to you guys about is the mindset of producer versus consumer. And so in my life, I was a consumer, right? As I told you, my wife drove a BMW, right? And I went and I worked for a career and I got paid good money and then we spent it all on whatever we wanted to do, traveling, you know, whatever it was. But the truth is I didn't produce anything. The thing is, guys, is that the more that we produce, the less control they have. And when hey, Mr. Bobby Spags, the more that we produce, the less they have control over us. And I think this is a really, really important thing. When I say producer, I think it's important you guys recognize I'm not talking about farming. Right, now that's one little piece, right? Growing your own food is one little piece of this equation, but producing your own energy is another equation, right? There's a big spectrum of becoming a producer, becoming an entrepreneur. Since I've left that company, I've formed 3 companies. And I get to choose now, right? I get to choose what happens every single day, you know, in them. So be a producer, not a consumer. The second thing is, when I use the word stroke, does anybody know what that means? It's kind of a corporate term. Stroke is when you get into a negotiation situation, you always want to have leverage in this situation, right? That allows me to have stroke in a deal. And so if I can apply a little bit of pressure from that leverage, typically those negotiations go well. Another way to think about it is permissions, right? And I think one of the things you guys got to do is identify who do you have to ask permission from. And people, I think, well, what do you mean by that? Well, open your check registry. When you write the check to the electric bill, you're asking for permission. Your sewer, it's permission. Your mortgage, it's permission, right? Because if you don't agree to their terms, if you don't follow through with your contract paying your bill, are you going to have it anymore? Nope, right? We're a slave to that. And so if we can identify, and I went through this, you guys, I'm weird. I come up in risk. So I went through this huge process. I have a spreadsheet we call the ungovernable score calculator, and it's vast. And I put all my information in it, and it spits out a score and tells me what I need to work on. So I went like way overboard on figuring out where I was tied into the system, but it's really not that complicated. Open your check register. And just sit down and look at it and say, okay, who do I have to ask permission for? And who can hold stroke over me? Who can come to me and say, hey, you posted on Facebook something negative about Biden. You used your social credits. You know, go through that process. And I think that by going through that process, you can really at least identify kind of where you're at. Do you guys know how many people it takes to turn on your light switch? How many people do you suppose it takes to bring you your chlorinated, fluoridated water? Right, many. There's many people back behind there. At the end of the day, guys, freedom is brutal. And I'll be the first to tell you, I live it every day. All of those people that we talk about, I'm that guy. Right, there was a day last year when it was Thanksgiving time, and we were having Thanksgiving or Christmas, I don't remember. Anyway, my sister-in-law was at the house, and she decided to dump a whole pot of chili down my sink. So that day it was minus 25. So she put it down there. Apparently some of it didn't get all the way down the drain. It was outside. It eventually, ice kept running by. It clogged up. 2 days later, in minus 41 degree wind chill factor, I was outside fixing it. Right? And so freedom is brutal. But guys, it's also empowering, right? Because I don't have to ask for permission. So if you guys think about a lion, right, out in the Serengeti, the lion in the Serengeti is free. Would you agree? Right? He's free to roam. He's free to do those things, but he also fights for his life every day. And the lion who's in the zoo is safe, but he has no choices. Living free is not this life where you just do what you want all day long, right? My life is consumed with providing my family the things they need to make it through the next day. But I have choices. The next item number, what are we on, number 4? Item number 4 is, anybody know what backside money is? Anyone familiar with that term?
What?
I know you are, Steve. Yeah.
Say it again.
We've hung out.
Say it again.
Backside money. Okay, so there's really 2 ways to make money. It's front side and backside money. Front side money is I go make more money, right? Simple as that. Backside money is how do I get to where I need less? Or how do I cut my expenses at a rate that I'm making more money? And I'll give you some examples of this. So let's go back to the front side. If you guys live a life, the consumer life, where all you do is want more, want more, want more, take more, take more, take more, what happens is you further ingrain yourself into servitude. Okay, the system's designed for you to work your whole life, to spend 40 years at a company, to invest all your money into a market so that they can take that money and earn interest off that money, give you a little crumb that falls off the table, to which at some point in time you retire, to which at some point in time you go on Social Security, and pretty soon you go to some nursing home and they take all of your money and the Medicare sped down and you leave this world as broke as you entered. The other side of the argument is backside money. Backside money is, let me give you some examples. Did you guys know the average American today pays 59% of their income in taxes? 59%. By the time you take income tax, all the property taxes, everything that we go in, and then once you bring your 41 cents home, then you go take that to, let's say, a tire store and you buy tires, and guess who gets the same 59% treatment? And then in 4 transactions, the federal government has all the money back. And you thought your whole life that money was real. The fact is, it isn't. If I could take that 59% taxes and I can take it down to a 39% tax rate, that's the same as making 20% on my money. There are very few, investments out there in the stock market or whatever that's going to yield you a 20% return on your money. So for me, I would much rather employ a tax strategist than a financial advisor. And that's coming from one, right? One last thing. So you guys know when I started this whole process and I went through all of this craziness, I needed $7,000 a month to break even. That's till I could pay my mortgage, pay my car payments, pay for violin lessons and all of those kind of things. Today I need $800. So the amount of money that it takes to live, I think, should be a focal point of all of you guys. If you can shrink that down, you get to a point, again, where you have a whole lot more choices. The final point I want to make to you guys today in reference to our conversation is build community. Just as you began this conversation today, guys, I'm going to tell you, I've studied this in length, and there is no way to get to 100% freedom. It is not possible. Our system, I don't know anybody who owns a salt mine, a sugar plantation, a sawmill. I don't know how to produce my own oil filters, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm telling you, you can get very close. But alone, you can't get close at all. Because with community, what we get to do is we get to build parallel economies. What we do, we get to barter with each other. We get to create, and we're doing it where I live, we're doing it right now. We have our own economy, we have our own medical system, we have our own, many of those kinds of things. But you can't do it alone. And so I hope what you guys come here today to do is to yoke up and to find community and to find people who are in your area and to begin to build those relationships, because I would rather put my faith in that like-minded than in the executive branch, the judicial branch, the legislative branch, the education system, the medical system, the food system, and the financial system. So anyway, I'd like to recap real quick with you guys. Exiting the system starts with your mindset, and it's followed by a commitment to production instead of consumption. It's about identifying who we must give permission to. It's about embracing the brutality of freedom, and it's basking in the empowerment of it. It's about choosing yourself and your family over your assigned master, and just as I did, you all have choices. You guys never, never, never forget the opposite of courage in our society today is not cowardice, it's compliance. The opposite of courage in our society today is not cowardice, it's compliance. My final point is this: the battles that we refuse to fight today, our kids are going to fight. It's time to stand up. Thank you.
Tag real quick before you disappear.
I'm hanging out with you, man.
What are some of the resources that people want to get more involved that you've done or accomplished or put out there through freesteading, through any of those things? Can you share, take a second, point people in those directions?
You bet. So I'll do my plugs first. So I have a YouTube channel called Life Done Free. And I named it Life Done Free, well, because I set out to live a life done free. I also own the social media platform freesteading.com. And freesteading was really built to kind of mimic Facebook, but to be for homesteaders and preppers and survivalists. And there's state pages there you can find. There are people in every single state page in there. It's 100% free. You're welcome to use it. But there's some other ones out there that I have nothing to do with. So, for example, Freedom Cells. You ever heard of that? FreedomCells.org is run by a guy named Derek Bros and John Bush, and they kind of do a lot of the same thing. I don't care whether you use my platform or you use theirs, just yoke up. just find a way to get together. You can also go to my website, which is lifedonefree.com, and the calculator that I was telling you guys that I built to figure out how much of a slave I was is on there for a free download. I don't ask for your email. I don't care about your email. Feel free to download it and give yourself the test. When I started, I scored a 31. I'm scoring a 78 today. And so it's fun to track that journey, kind of as I went through it.
Still tracking and tracing yourself.
Oh, guaranteed.
That's part of the thing you said too about building community and why that's important. I think that's this paradox almost of this kind of lifestyle, right? We want the sustainable living compared to self-reliance, and what's the difference? We get to this point where we realize, oh my God, I'm a slave to a system. I am a battery to an organism.
Yes.
That's all I am, is something that exists so that they can be more powered and more empowered. So if you want to break free from that, then you get this mindset that the pendulum swings the other way. I am going to live like Grizzly Adams in the middle of the woods. I'm going to be all by myself. If I don't grow it, I don't eat it. If I don't make it, I don't use it. All of those things. When we realize that, while that's possible, would life be best achieved if that were the way? God created us as social creatures, not just as free men. Yes, free men and women, we are. But he also created us to be social creatures. He created the tribes of Israel. He created the laws for a community. That was his construct. So we have to be careful too, and realizing that there are a set of constructs that exist that were established by God, and a set of constructs that exist that are established by man. What do you think man's been trying to do since the beginning of time? Empower, replace those social constructs. That's why it's all about compliance, not courage. Because then you'll quit obeying God's constructs and you'll start obeying man's. And once they do that, they know you've got you because you turned it on that. So that building community is huge important, because no man is an island, right? You will move from a state of dependence on a system to a perceived thing of independence, but then the pendulum will swing the other way, and you'll realize that the best place to be is a series of codependence, to find other people with skills who are free, who want to do these things. And I might have gaps still. We've only been doing this for about 8 years or so as a family. And before that, we were part of the system, and we were part of all these constructs too. And every year, it's like that onion. We're just peeling back layers going, oh, wow. And if we had stopped, if we didn't join community or find other people that helped us figure that out, that's like taking your mirror down and hoping you get better looking. Doesn't work that way. Every time I walk by a mirror, I'm like, hey, I do get better looking. But
My eyesight's going, I do get better.
see, that's all. It takes either one, a better mirror or bad eyesight. Either one. But in that, well, I think that the biggest things you agree with when you ask that, what systems are working for you? And when he asked the question at the beginning, right, facetiously I answered, yes, the executive branch is working on my behalf. But so we recognize that all the examples that he mentioned were forms of government. So let's break it down with that. And then when you talked about the great migration, and that's a huge important thing to realize. People weren't running necessarily out west for gold in the mid-1800s. Yes, they were. But what was the promise of going out west? To get more gold. They realized that gold would buy them freedom from the construct of the system that was back east. And the people who, you know what, all this time, everybody's arguing over about slave and not slave state. Let's get out of here. Let's go to a place where any man can own a piece of land as long as he's willing to do what? To work it. Was that a promise of an easier lifestyle when they moved out west?
No, the promise of a much harder lifestyle.
Correct.
Much harder.
But anything that we recognize then, if it's not easier, if it's going to be harder, not just harder, but much harder, but what's the reward? Why would people do it? See, we've mistakenly identified this thing about freedom of society, that the construct that is available, what happens to a person's actual figure when they get out and they work? They become more physically fit, whether that's any kind of level of fitness. And in society, we've emulated that to go, if you go to a gym and pretend to do those things that hardworking men do, you'll have a body and you'll look good for it, right? Hey, if you just eat food that doesn't have this in it, then you'll look like you're doing all these things. So society, that other social construct has taught us, have the appearance of success. Does anybody know why we mow our lawns, or where that tradition of mowing your grass came from? It was a sign of wealth that you had enough livestock to maintain a grazed pasture of 3 inches. Not less than 3 inches, because then your grass would burn. Not more than 3 inches, because then obviously you were poor. You didn't have enough livestock and you were poor at managing it. And when people realized they couldn't fake the funk, guess what they went out there and started doing? Cutting their grass. To what height? 3 inches. The HOA will get on you if you go 4 inches, won't they? So think about that. Where did all of these simple things come from? So if the promise of a harder life means the promise of a more fulfilled and better lived life and a freer life, then we should actually be looking almost for a mindset that says, there's 2 ways to do this. Every day is a struggle between the right way and the easy way. And the easy way will always be there ready to wash you out. So when you wake up in the morning and it's cold and you have to go out there and feed the chickens or do whatever, those should be the things we embrace as free people, because that's the thing that we know has the reward on the other side. And if we encourage our children as we do that, we encourage our neighbors as we do that, that's part of the best life ever. But now let's take it a step further. Now we're in community. So now he's out there trying to do something in -41 wind chill, and he can use any of these communication devices and say, hey, look, I've got a problem I can't fix. I don't have a pipe snake big enough to get down there. I don't have the knowledge to do this. That's when all of a sudden it's an awesome part of becoming a community, is the part where you get to go and help the other people. And you go, -41 wind chill, I'm going to go help Tag because I can do something he can. Now we all of a sudden, everybody, if you think about how good that feels, it multiply that times 1,000 when you start applying that to all these different layers of your life. So again, very blessed and the fact of knowing him. Anybody have any questions for Tag about any specific things on his journey or about what it was like? Because like he said, you know, courage doesn't always sound like the scripted movie. It's not like when they first came to him, they said, hey, what do you think about having the company, everybody will take their jab? He didn't go, yeah, that's a good idea, or bad idea. That's evil. We should fight it here and now. No, at first, you're almost like, wait a minute. It catches you off guard, and you have to sit there and go, I don't think this is a good idea. And then it takes, the courage part is that uncomfortable feeling where you know, okay, we're going to change and we're going to lose everything. We did that. We moved out of subdivision. You know what my wife drove? BMW. But and it's all those things. But and we live in a completely off-grid house ourselves too. And we built it before I ever even met this guy. But that's that whole point about it, is that we can find community with one another. Realize, one, you're not alone. Two, there are people who have crossed parts of this path westward on the Great Migration to freedom that you haven't yet crossed. And there's nothing more valuable on any journey than a map written by somebody who's been there. So that's the other greatest part about finding it. So thank you very much. Anybody have any questions for him? Yes, a question.
Hey, Tag, do you provide services on helping people getting out of like 401ks and investments and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I'm not a financial advisor. I can't give you financial advice. You need to seek a legal profession, blah, 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 blah. Off record, I'm happy to have any conversation you'd like.
There's a tagline. That's my life joke. Life joke's almost as good as dad.
I'd be happy to chit chat with you.
Hey, Tag, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Actually, just the microphone so the audience can hear it. Why aren't there any 4th of July knock-knock jokes?
I have no idea. Why is there none?
Because freedom rings. If you haven't yet figured this out, dad jokes are for me. They're not really for you. I mean, you take them, put them in your pocket, but the dad jokes are really entertainment for the person telling them, right? Yeah, he's like, yeah, I know all the time.
Daddy, do the one I told you last night.
Oh, my daughter even feeding me with that stuff. Ready? All right. What do you call a farmer made of candy? A Jolly Rancher. All right. Seriously, any more questions?
Any other question? Yes, sir.
Tag, I just have a comment.
Yes, sir.
I've been watching you ever since you were on first with Danny of Deep South,
Oh, thank you.
and I really enjoyed. Friday nights are tied up. I noticed I'm not going to be missing this Friday night. I didn't miss it last night because I was here, but that's the first one. You're not holding it. So I trust that you and B are doing well. I wanted you to know how much I appreciate that. I've been living the life of a prepper ever since Paul and I have been married. And I started life out as an educator, worked as a professor of mechanical engineering for 28 years, went through all the ranks, did retire, always working in a secular system, I still convinced my students that living for our Lord is what we really need to do.
Good for you.
And that's the way I feel life is. One of the things I'm proud of and one of the things I'm ashamed of is that I'm an emeritus professor of mechanical engineering. If I was the president of a university, there'd be few professors that would remain. But I guarantee you, I really appreciate what you have done for us, how you have given me the confidence to keep going. I have now sustained a degree of independence. I consider myself about 45, 50% there. I am energy independent. You had a lot to do in convincing me to go that way. Now, I happen to be north of 80, so I can't get up on a roof and do a lot of the things. So I hired my system to be done. It's an in-phase system. I'm talking to Spags right now about putting protection on it. But if it weren't for you and for B and Spags, Data, I'll never forget your conversation on community and the 4 branches of the community. Meant tremendous. All I can say from the bottom of my heart is you're appreciated.
You know, but those things are what keep me going. Thank you. Thank you for saying that to me. And hey, you know what? I'll tell you something else. I'm super, super proud of you that you know where you are, because most people don't. It gave me goosebumps when you said I'm 45% there. That's badass. That's awesome.
No, it's bad because I recognize also if I miss paying my property taxes, I've lost my quote-unquote sustainability. So until we get that point, our property should be a right, not a command.
Yeah, I'd actually like to talk about that just a little bit. You know, we talked about, I kind of bashed on the education system, the finance system.
Hey, I bash on it totally.
But here's the thing, at the end of the day, you guys are the front lines. I know great teachers who are doing the right thing every single day. I mean, great ones. I know great police officers who won't violate my constitutional rights. I have great relationships with them. We need those people on those front lines, fighting those fights, putting their heels in the ground and saying no. I don't know if you guys know this, no is a complete sentence.
Yes.
No. It's perfectly acceptable. And so when you talk about community and you talk about taxes, there's a lot of ways to go about it. You know, we've gotten advanced enough in our community that I have one person on the county commission. I have one on the school board. We're getting ready to elect hopefully a second one to the county commission. As soon as I do that, I have 2 of 3. I don't know if you guys know how majority works. Right? We're going to wage war on that, and we're going to really try to get those property taxes down. It's a shame that old people today who've lived in their house for 40 or 50 years are losing their home because they can no longer afford property taxes. It's an absolute shame. We've done them a disservice. We're doing ourselves a disservice. But guys, you have to be intentional. We got to go get in the fight. If we're going to sit at home and wait because we're going to be put on some kind of list or the FBI is going to watch us, guys, they don't care about you. You're small fish. Don't worry about it. Go get in the fight. Get in it every single day. Show up to those meetings and go do those kinds of things. And I applaud you, bud. Thanks for motivating me.
Thank you for greasing the skids.
Can you talk about those 4 pillars of community that inspired him on that?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the crew, the mag, the mind, right, and the clan, right? And so I look at community as this very broad picture thing. It's not, when I was coming up early on, you know, I would read books and I would read, you know, watch YouTube and I'd do those kinds of things. And what I was led to believe is that what community was 6 people, off-road Jeep, 2,000 rounds of ammunition and a year's worth of food. But that's just simply not the case. It's what I thought it was back then. And so as I've kind of gone down this process, I think of community in this huge broad thing. So we have the tag clan. A clan is my family, right? And so most of my efforts go to my clan, which is my wife, and you know, my kids and those kind of things. But just outside of that is what we call the crew. And the crew is made up of a whole bunch of little clans, and those are the clans that get together on a weekend basis. For those of you guys who watch my channel, I've just put out a couple videos. We built a guy a house, a whole house. It cost him 10 pizzas twice, right? And he had to buy the material, had it all showed up, it was all there. The clans and the crew got together, and we showed up on a Saturday, and at the end of day 1, all of his walls were up. At the end of day 2, his roof was on. You know, so he got to make $1 too. He didn't have to put that money into the system, right? We just built him a house. And if you go on my channel, you'll see to do that. So anyways, then you got the crew. Outside of that, we have the MAG. The MAG is more of a regional thing, and it's a whole bunch of crews who get together. In my area, there's 5 or 6 communities, and Skanesboro has witnessed it, that we all come together. We'll do, potlucks, and we'll do those things. But
MAG is an acronym? What's
yeah,
it stand
for Mutual Assistance Group is what it stands for. The outside circle of that's called the mind, and that's you guys. You guys are my mind, right? It's all the like-minded people that we get to network with, we get to do business with, we get to keep our money out of the system by doing business with like-minded people. Guys, the vendors who are out there today spent their money to come here today for you. They're the ones that paid for all of this. How do you suppose you got here for free? Somebody paid for it, I promise you. So anyway, so it's clan, crew, MAG, and mine.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Anything else? I think I'm out of here, bud.
We'll hold the coffee for you.
I'll bring you coffee.
Yeah, I would love to have a
I'll
coffee.
bring you coffee.
Anybody else?
He drinks decaf. Decaf.
Decaf.
I think it'd be funny to see her on caffeine. He needs a dark.
Oh.
Yeah, me on caffeine. It's like, anybody ever seen that movie Over the Hedge with Hemi the squirrel, and he drinks the energy drink and outruns the laser and he looks at it? Yeah, that's me on caffeine. You don't want that. That was one of the things that inspires us all, right? I think it's important that Tag went first, because it is about leaving the system. That's kind of step one in this journey. And it takes a lot of courage, right? Anybody ever jump out of an airplane? It takes a lot of courage. Anybody ever jump out of an airplane without a parachute? That takes no courage, it takes stupidity. In other words, so now I encourage you the rest of this time, sew your parachute this weekend. You developed the courage that you would make that jump, but now sew the parachute, put it together. Make that thing that's gonna make the journey survivable, and maybe even comfortable, maybe even enjoyable. And so attend these other classes and workshops and figure out, obviously if you're here, you probably are somewhere in your journey. Sometimes people come here, and we've met people at Homestead festivals before, and it's their very first time. They are 100% in the system. They're working regular jobs, live on a golf course, and do all those things. But they said, and in fact, it was during one it was in the fall of 2020 that we had first met them, and they had come to a Homestead festival with a bunch of people that were in their crews, even though they didn't know that was yet. And they have sent, and we still get pictures of their gardens that they're making now and all those things. It's about that move toward independence or less dependence on that system. So no matter where you are in that journey, I'm still 100% a part of all these constructs and dependent upon it, or I'm 40%, I'm 70%, wherever you are. Hopefully today, this weekend, it moves the ball forward for you.